안녕하십니까. 머니투데이방송 최남수입니다. 속도 경영이라는 말이 나올 정도로 빠르게 변화하는 시대에 우리는 살고 있습니다. 그만큼 불확실성이 커진 상황에서 이제는 혁신은 생존을 위해서 항상 진행해야 하는 필요충분조건이 됐습니다. 더 나은 미래를 준비하기 위해서 머니투데이 미디어가 지난해에 이어 두 번째로 마련한 글로벌 혁신 컨퍼런스 키플랫폼 2014가 4월 23일과 24일 양일간 열렸습니다. 오늘 이 자리에는 주요 연사와 진행자 세 분을 모셨습니다. 네, 오늘 이 자리에 함께해 주신 세 분 먼저 소개해드리겠습니다. 키플랫폼 2014의 총회 진행자이자 드로기그룹 전략자문 대표인 마이클 트램 대표님. 다음으로 경영전략 논쟁서의 저자이자 가나지와공업대학의 대학원 교수님인 미타니 고지 교수님. 감사합니다. 마지막으로 센스앤서스테이너빌리티 설립자인 박지성 대표님.
네, 안녕하세요.
Thank you so much giving us a valuable chance to interview all of you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Mr. Tram, after last year you are our host for Key Platform this year as well. Please give your impressions to us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I'm deeply affected, I have to say, with Key Platform 2014. I'm affected with Korea, with its people. I do business in Korea since many, many years. And when then Chairman Hong asked me to moderate again the Key Platform, I was very honored. The Key Platform is a very unique business conference. It is very creative, very interactive, very insightful, and I'm affiliated to it because it's such a learning experience.
So then can you introduce about what content they provide and how 2014 Key Platform has been made?
This year's topic is innovation.
Yeah.
Innovation 101. So the participants had not only heard about the essence of innovation, but they also had the chance to get a glimpse, a detailed manual of what innovation is all about.
Yeah. The next question goes to Professor Mr. Koji Mitani. I know you are a well-known leader to Korean leaders through your remarkable book, 50 Giant of Strategy, right? Yeah. From your perspective, how have you evaluated the Key Platform 2014 this year?
Yeah, it's definitely valuable to gather such a latest information or knowledge about innovation, simply because the world is changing, especially in this innovation field. So we should collaborate each other and we should know each other in order to understand the latest world. But you should be very much careful. In such an event, you may try to understand everything. It's not a good idea. You should select the most nice one to fit you, and that is a key value of such an event, I think.
Mr. Brock, your name is not almost the same
Exactly
as
the same.
name of the famous soccer, so hardly forget your name.
Right.
So you are the founder of the Sense&Sustainability, right?
Right.
It's a bit unfamiliar to Korean viewers, so can you introduce a bit about your company?
Absolutely. So we are Sense and Sustainability, as you said. We call it SNS for short because Sense and Sustainability is a mouthful. We're a network of researchers and writers who come around the idea of sustainable development and try to address it from multiple perspectives. I think in the context of this conference, though, and especially this program, the things that stand out about us are that we are a young organization and global. Most of our contributors are in their 20s.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that it's headquartered in Harvard, the writers are drawn from many countries. And I think what we lack in expertise, we try to make up for in freshness and youth perspective.
So I know a few of your staff participated in this Key Platform 2014. So how many?
So 16 of us are here.
Oh, 16.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 키플랫폼 2014, so what did you present, especially you? Yeah.
So we were brought in to see if we could shed some insight as to how sustainability as a theme might actually become part of a core innovation driver. And so in my case, I tried to focus on the ways in which businesses might move away from thinking about sustainability as, say, compliance obligation or corporate social responsibility or recycling, things like that, toward a key source of innovation as a core value proposition.
Yeah. So, Mr. Tram, the topic of, as you said earlier, the topic of the KeyPlatform 2014 is the collapse of business model and the one-on-one innovation. This is just a bit broad, the question, but how could you summarize the content overall?
Yeah, summarizing such an impressive conference is, of course, difficult. But let me say, according to my understanding of innovation, there are three basic points. Innovation needs collaboration, as you said. Partnerships and alliances multiply the innovation capacities. Second, innovation needs talents. People must commit themselves for innovation and they need to be empowered to do so. And last but not least, innovation needs leadership. Ongoing top management involvement and example setting makes a company a strong innovator.
말씀 들으니까 이번 총회 아주 흥미로운 주제들이 발표된 것 같습니다. 이번 키 플랫폼이 어떤 내용을 담고 있는지 화면을 통해서 보시고 계속해서 얘기 나누겠습니다.
취재기간 270일, 이동거리 16만 킬로미터, 지구 4바퀴의 거리를 돌아 500여 명의 기업인을 만나고 250회의 인터뷰를 통해 탄생한 2014 키플랫폼. 불확실한 미래, 치열한 생존 게임에서 살아남기 위한 히든 카드. 글로벌 이노베이터 100. 그들의 화려한 성공 이면에 숨은 고민. 그리고 찾아낸 혁신의 길. 미래를 선점할 혁신 이노베이터 101. 그 하나는 바로 당신.
Focusing on different opportunities where we can get manufacturing innovation going, create jobs, make sure that the research is tied to businesses that are actually hiring.
혁신을 통한 경제 부흥을 천명한 미국, 혁신 중견기업의 천국 독일, EU 경제 혁신 지수 1위 스웨덴, 협업을 통해 혁신하는 네덜란드. 이들에게서 찾은 혁신의 실체. 경계가 무너진 초연결성 시대. 모든 것은 만나고 변화하고 새롭게 태어난다. 융합을 통해 재탄생되는 미래 산업 지형도, 그 안에서 변화하는 기업의 비즈니스 모델. 무한 경쟁에서 승자가 되기 위해서 우리 기업은 이제 시장의 미래를 스스로 창조해 나가야 한다. 홀로 갈 수 없는 길. 공유하는 경험과 지식, 오픈 이노베이션. 상호 협력을 통해 더욱 강력한 혁신의 힘을 키우고 있는 네덜란드의 혁신 클러스터 HTCE. 이곳은 매년 40에서 50개에 이르는 혁신 솔루션들을 지적 자산으로 만들어 서로 공유하며 각자의 사업 개발에 적극 활용, 무한한 가치를 창조하고 있다.
Our business model is that we collaborate with, at this moment, over 30 industrial companies, and we do this research in a shared way, so open innovation, and the knowledge that's generated can be used by these companies in their product.
비즈니스 모델의 전환, 밸류 스틱의 혁신, 디자인 싱킹과 오픈 이노베이션. 이 모든 것을 빠르게 실행하게 하는 바탕에는 혁신의 ABC가 있다. 시장을 읽는 섬세한 통찰력, 함께 나누고 공유하는 지식, 융합을 통한 재창조. 혁신으로 가는 길은 바로 비즈니스 모델의 파괴를 실행하는 것이다.
Professor Mitani, so as you know, the innovation has been a keyword all around the world. So, but everybody can talk about innovation very easily, but only a few people can achieve it. So, what are the obstacles to innovation, and how can we overcome those?
It would be quite different between the big organization and small startups.
Yeah, that depends.
The innovation
on
is quite
yeah.
different. It quite depends, and especially for the large organization, Vijay Govindarajan, he's the well-known professor about innovation, pointed out that you have to anyway forget the past success.
Yeah, forget the past.
Yeah, forget the past success, and borrow the limited capability of the existing businesses, especially the personnel capability or personnel function or other IT function. You will easily borrow from the existing ones, but it would easily fall into the big hole.
Yeah.
Anti-innovation. And the last one, is the learning. The new business in the big company should not be evaluated by earning, but learning. How can we learn from the trial and the errors? And for the small businesses, I mean the startups, Eric Ries, written the famous book named The Lean Startup. The Lean Startup means the lean management of the startups. The Toyota said the lean management is the key for manufacturing. What is the lean? Lean is a reduction of the waste. The most waste of production is overproduction, Toyota said. But even in startups, there's a huge the waste. It's a waste of actually overproduction or over quality of trial and errors. So you should be lean enough in startups too.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Bach, I know you're a graduate from Harvard.
That's correct.
I was denied admission.
Well, I was luckier than you in some weird way.
Yeah, I was lucky. Yeah. You made the non-profit organization. So what do you want to say through your organization to society?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, we're a very young organization, and it was a bunch of graduate students sitting around the table over dinner that started the organization. It came out of a sense that there was a growing need in the media space with respect to talking about this issue of sustainability. It's become a buzzword, right? Everybody is talking about sustainability. And so we thought the noise to signal ratio was getting a little bit out of control. And in that sense, we wanted to see if we could bring together writers, researchers from various universities and organizations who share this passion about sustainable development in a way that could, again, separate the signal from the noise and see if we can apply these concepts to, say, things like how businesses can innovate within the realm of sustainability. So that was the core goal. Again, we're a very young organization, so we're moving toward that, hopefully.
So then, what is the most important condition for sustainable development or growth?
Wow. I only get one condition?
So big.
So I guess I put it this way. I borrow a page out of one of my professor's books and say, it first takes a mind shift. It needs a perspective shift from thinking about sustainability as, especially if you're a business, thinking about sustainability as a compliance obligation or something that you do with your employees, more recycling, whatever, to something that, again, can be part of your core value proposition in a way that by creating social value that moves the needle, right, the global needle toward a more sustainable economic trajectory, you actually make profit as well. So finding those kinds of examples, the way Tesla Motors has, for example, or the way GE has with Ecomagination and GE Water. I think that perspective shift, if I had to name one condition, is probably the one condition.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Trent, this question is about the current situation of the world economy. So, yes, two big questions, but we know that the global economy still is somewhere in the long-lasting recession tunnel. And then right now, the economic growth and the job creation are our priority. So, what is your focus on world economic outlook, especially for this year?
Well, I think the next 12 months of the world economy will very much driven also by the situation, how the world economy reacts on what we see happening in Russia these days. That might quickly impact the energy prices. That might quickly impact how certain countries will export, others import. So I'm cautious about the next 12 months. I'm concerned.
Yeah, so you are from Europe. So what about the Europe? So do they escape from the serious situation? Or?
Look, Europe is an exporting countries. We export to Russia, we export to China, into many other countries, of course. If we now see that due to a potential increase of energy prices, China might invest less, China might import less cars, or Russia the same, or wherever in Asia, then of course this is negatively impacting what we do in Europe, no doubt about that.
Yeah. So in this situation, so what does the sustainable growth mean, especially in this situation, and how can we accomplish it?
Well, sustainability is something that cannot be measured in 6 months or 12 months. Sustainability is something that needs forward-looking dimension, 5 years, 10 years. And so it is, by the way, also my understanding of collaboration in business. Take my country, where we have since 100 years plus very close business relationships, for example, with Russia, with China, with many other countries. And when you then see the ups and downs in the politics, I think the businessmen, as we are sitting here around the table, always need to look forward, need to look at their sustainable business, what they do, and should not get panicked by sorts of politics and things that anyhow cannot be impacted by us. So therefore we need to find the way, the communication, the sense to the people, to the business, and that makes then business sustainable too.
Professor Mitani, so as is shown on the screen earlier, there's a proposal, suggestion about the open innovation in strategies of companies that need innovation. I think this is a bit unfamiliar concept to Korean viewers, so can you explain a little bit about the meaning of open innovation and why do we need that?
The definition is simple. In the world of Michael Porter, the value chain was closed in the company. But now we have to find out the old resources, the old functions are open. We have to reach beyond the company, which means open innovation. You have to open and you have to utilize every resources around you. And it is definitely necessary to create innovation because it's not enough. Your own resources is not enough to create the next era.
Yeah. Yeah. So Michael Porter is a Harvard guy, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
다음으로 이 세 분의 전문가들로부터 한국 경제에 대한 조언을 들어보는 그런 시간을 가져보겠습니다. Mr. Park, I know that the partners of SNS attended in many sessions and presented some interesting topics. By the way, how do you evaluate the sustainability of Korean economy from your point of view?
Right. So I think in this respect, the economist Paul Krugman put it best when he said that South Korea and many of the East Asian economies, but particularly South Korea, has been moving from what he calls the perspiration model of economic development to the inspiration model of economic development. And that transition seems to be a difficult one for everyone. But in as much as Korea, as far as I understand, has sort of embraced the extent to which sustainability challenges such as climate change or water scarcity will impact South Korea's overall economic potential or competitiveness, I think they're doing a great job. I think they're a leader in Asia. If you look at the things that the Korean federal government has done, national government has done in terms of climate change, the cap and trade program that is supposed to come into effect in 2015 is one of the most ambitious in the world and looks to become the third largest, if I'm not mistaken, cap and trade program. So that sends a very strong signal to Samsung, SK, Hyundai, the Korean companies that Korea is very serious about moving toward an economic model that takes sustainability seriously and is of this inspiration model, not the perspiration model.
Mr. Tram, so you have been doing, I heard that the in-depth research on the way of going to innovation with the Kiplátform 2014 during last 9 months. So how do you evaluate the innovative capabilities of Korean companies and Korean economy?
The innovation forces and the innovation power of Korean companies depends, of course, on how much they open themselves for collaboration. Trying to do everything on their own is, by system, today not possible anymore. We observe some companies who are forerunners, some companies who are forced to become forerunners because they see that their current business model is disruptive, close to be disruptive. Therefore, there is no other chance to become an innovator or leave the business. This is the minority. The big majority of companies that I observe as an external, as someone who looks outside in, is that there is too much the attempt of doing things alone, trying to solve the problems as they have always been solved, and not using the huge capabilities of collaboration, of open innovation, but rather still looking on the way it has always been done. I think these companies cannot afford that much longer. They are very, very much under pressure. Therefore, the leadership, the current leadership and the future leadership of these firms needs to be very well aware of the big challenges they will face soon.
Yeah, I think you almost answered the next question, but the more specific, the one I will give you. The Korean companies seems to have been doing well until now, but I think that they are worrying about the potential another shock from any innovative product came up with anybody later on. So can you give them the more specific advice how to go first in this global innovative competition?
Yeah, the question that we often hear is to say, how can I bring a more innovative product to the market? But this is by far a too small view. Innovation of products can be something which is very simple. Innovating the 25th instant soup, tasting mushroom or tomato or whatsoever is an innovation, but for what sake? as I said before, we need to look for innovative business models. How can a company itself, or can a whole industry itself re-innovate? How can processes within a company or processes how companies with each other communicate, work together, how can these processes become re-innovated? And then, last but not least, in the long line of possibilities of innovation, then you might also have a new innovative product. But only asking for the innovation of a product is much too short.
So, Mr. Mitani, I know that the Japanese companies have been facing many difficulties. So, in this global competition of innovation, so can you give us some sense how they are trying to overcome those difficulties?
Actually, Japanese companies and maybe Korean companies has now in the same pitfall. For the last 40 or 50 years, the Korean executives has kept on learning from the world, including Japan. They learn from the success of Japan and learn from the failure of Japan. But the both are now in a over-learning, I think. The over-learning, which means they learn too much.
Learn too much.
Too much, especially in terms of knowledge.
Yeah.
Innovation comes from the individual creativity. But creativity comes from the what? Not knowledge. So over-learning prevents people from thinking itself. If you learn it, you stop thinking because you know it. So make children free and poor is my key messages for the both countries. Because if you are poor, and if your children is poor, you have to select one of the several toys to buy. It's a severe trade-offs. And if you are poor and free, you have to create your toys, or you have to create how to play. But now, the children has rich and they very busy to get knowledge.
Yeah.
It's far from the way for the innovation and creativity. That is my key message.
So, Mr. Park, you are from United States. So it seems that the U.S. economy almost recovers from the difficulties that took place last.
Right.
Yeah.
The Great Recession.
So my question is that overall, what happened in Silicon Valley, and then do you think that the U.S. continue to be the innovative leader? What is the condition for it?
So that's an interesting question. Let me see if I can answer that question by also addressing a very interesting point that I thought you brought up, Professor, which has to do with education and the system of education. I actually spent, I lived in Korea for 5 years as well. So I went to a school, public school here as well, so I could compare to some degree the education systems. And I think you're absolutely right. The conditions under which innovation seem to arise are not when you have to memorize.
No.
You have to learn and repeat, rinse and repeat over and over. There is something to learn and something to regurgitate on an exam. It's when you're faced with a problem and you're free to deal with it on your own, right? In that sense, I think the U.S. economy, because of its strength in higher education and the freedom that it gives to its students to come up with the crazy new Facebooks, right? Or the Apples in a garage, right, from a college dropout, I think that is sort of the key ingredient that enables the U.S. to even weather the storm like the Great Recession and to continue to be at least close to the innovation frontier, if not on it all the time. And I think that's one of the key points that, again, Korea and Japan may need to think seriously about in terms of education if they are serious about innovation as a key driver.
Anyway, we need a garage first.
A big one, yeah.
So, Mr. Mitani, the Korean government is now emphasizing the creative economy as a new goal. Did you hear it?
Sure.
So, for the Korea's economy to change more creatively, what approach do you need? Any advice?
Oh, yeah, that is what I said. make children poor and
Give them a garage.
yeah.
For free garage.
Yeah, give them a garage.
Yeah, that is the key. Actually, the KIT, Canada Institute of Technology, has a very big garage. Yeah, if you try to make the project, you will have the small budget, but the freedom to use the big garage with a very aged professor.
Right.
But he will see, does not make much advices. Just say, look at that. Yeah.
I think that in the German, I think the hidden companies, I heard a lot about the hidden companies in Germany. So I think you have some advice to the Korean government about that.
Yeah, we call that hidden champions.
Yeah.
It's what you often find in the German Mittelstand. And a little bit contradictory to what you say. Of course, you need to have the freedom. You need to have you need to be hungry. So keep them poor, as you say. Yeah. On the other side, I think learning at universities, learning in top schools, is absolutely key element. I'm not sure whether we need another Facebook company, a company where people like you and me put their names on and then there's new kind of advertising mechanism behind. I don't think that is so innovative. The innovation where I believe we build wealth of a country, where we give people employment, that comes more from the innovation processes we find, we have to say, still mostly in the traditional industries. That might change over years, no doubt. Right. We see with great respect the Googles of this world. But coming back to your question on the hidden champions, the German Mittelstand, all these are traditional companies in the industry, mainly engineering companies, but also companies in the chemical sector, food processing sector, automotive, and so on. And you need their top engineering know-how. And this top engineering know-how needs to be learned in universities, and therefore education, education, education. This is my 3 advices.
Education. Okay. Garage education. Oh,
Yeah. Well, I think if I could just briefly respond to that, I think you're absolutely right. And I would hate to make it sound as if one would endorse that Korea, flip the switch and go completely on the other side of the spectrum and abandon traditional education. I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would imagine that to some extent it's sort of a matter of where on the spectrum you lie. Absolutely. I mean, even in the U.S., right, you hear in the news all the time about the lack of math and science education skills within the population and the lack of engineering know-how among college graduates. That is certainly a problem. But in as much as the baseline from which the South Korean and maybe the Japanese economy or education system is starting is just so much rote memorization, maybe somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
Maybe not quite garage. That was a little bit of an overstatement.
Okay.
Next, the 3 common questions for all of you. Actually, for me, I'm worrying about the negative effect of the technological development on jobs creation. Recently, I read the books. The title of the book is Our Future, written by Al Gore. He's also worrying about they say that the technological development, such as the 3D computing, something like that, will reduce the jobs. Do you agree with that, or do you think that the technological development will continue to create jobs? So you first.
I mean, you said Al Gore wrote that?
Yeah.
Well, he's a great man, but look at the history. Look 50 years back, look 100 years back. Did any technological development destroy employment? No, it changed it. But if Al would be right, then probably today there would no one be employed anymore, because the technology development started when? 100, 150 years ago, whenever you want. So there's a change. Change is good, and we need to be ready to participate in the change.
So he's wrong. Yeah. How about you?
Should I? Oh.
Yeah.
So I'd say I would agree with the fact that technological change doesn't necessarily destroy jobs. It may displace them in the short run, but ultimately it changes them. I think you're absolutely right. And I think the short answer is that probably in the short run, we should be a little bit worried about the job loss that comes from technological change, simply because the numbers suggest that it's not simply transferring someone who used to work in a bank as a teller. His job is totally replaceable by new technology. But it's not as if that person immediately has a different job that he can do. So the transitional mechanism is somewhere that I think many economists would agree there's some work to be done.
Point,
and the government may need to do some work there. Yeah.
So, how about you?
Yeah, as Park-san said, it's inevitable anyway. So we have to prepare. The difficulty is how can we predict it? Which types of jobs will be lost or not? We're not sure in this innovation era. So the two preparation could be possible at the government, so-called job net or job net system to secure the low level of the
Safety net.
Yeah, safety net. Yeah, safety net. And the other is a personal issues. You have to prepare by yourself to be transformed or to change yourself.
Yeah.
That is the point, I think.
Education becomes key.
Yeah.
I think more jobs will be lost in companies who do not invest in new technologies rather than in companies who invest in new technologies.
I would agree with that.
Okay. Almost time's up. So the last question for three of you. I think that you evaluate the Korean economy, the Korean companies relatively very positively. But the answer I want to hear from you is that kind of you can pick up one or two things Korea economy or Korea companies should change or improve in this global competition. So this time, starting from you.
No.
Yeah.
Usually, of course, Japanese economy or Japanese companies looks in the difficulties. But actually, the small or medium-sized high-technology companies survived, and they provide lots of the elements or chemical powders to the world, including the Samsung. So it could be the problem for Korean economy. They do not have reached such a small or middle size of companies which would support the jobs, actually. So such an imbalance between the big guy and these small
I
guys.
agree. We need the hidden champions. For you?
I mean, I think Professor stole my thunder. I was going to say pretty much the same thing, that it seems like a small number of big fish dominate the corporate landscape in Korea, which can be problematic for innovation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's clear. You need collaboration. We talked about it. You need talent management. We talked about it. We need an effective leadership. And last but not least, I think innovation excellence is possible, but it needs a systematic approach. Overall, a concept.
Thank you so much for your time and the great conversation here. I hope you enjoyed the productive discussion in the 키플랫폼 and have good memories in Korea. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
혁신은 누구나 쉽게 얘기합니다. 하지만 소수의 기업만이 제대로 된 혁신을 이뤄내고 생존합니다. 성장과 생존을 위한 필요 충분 조건이 된 혁신. 또 어떤 기업이 혁신의 아이콘으로 등장할지, 그리고 이 과정에서 어떤 기업이 흔들릴지 변하는 시장을 우리는 목격하게 될 것입니다. 시청해주신 여러분 감사합니다.